Welcome to this edition and this brand new season, our third season of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak. We get things started this year with a conversation with a man who's visiting the United States as a foreigner, but before long, he's going to be a proud American. Our conversation with Jonathon Dunne is next. First, I want to talk to you about a man who lived over a century ago, a great man named Frederick Douglass, who said, quote, "I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong." Abolitionist, statesman, minister, and perhaps the most brilliant mind of the 19th century, it's almost impossible to overstate the value of Frederick Douglass to our nation. He was the first well-known abolitionist to recognize the Constitution as an anti-slavery document. He firmly believed that education was the best collective path forward from slavery and racism, and that a personal relationship with God was necessary to achieve success in life. If you ever get a chance to read his autobiography, you're going to see through the eyes of an American who lived in terrible conditions as a slave, but ended up a free man with a love for this country, the United States of America. In honor of this great American, the Frederick Douglass Coffee Blend from American Pride Roasters Coffee is a special micro lot. And that just means it's a very small batch from a single farm. But this micro lot is a blend from Colombia, and the coffee, like its namesake, Frederick Douglass, is complex in flavor, bold yet amazingly smooth, with a pleasing sweet chocolate caramel finish that will energize your day. Head over to aprcoffee.com and try this and so many other blends available for both the casual coffee drinker and the coffee bean aficionado alike. And remember, as always, to use promo code ATM at checkout and get you 10% off. That's ATM, stands for At the Mic, when you purchase coffee from aprcoffee.com. Get on it right now, and you're going to have coffee brewing in time for the next episode of At the Mic. That's aprcoffee.com.
You're listening to At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production.
Jonathon Dunne is my first guest of this season of At the Mic. Jonathon was born and raised in Ireland, but has recently met the love of his life here in the United States, and he should be calling himself an American later this year. How exciting for Jonathon. He recently visited me in the Dallas area studio to tell us about his interesting childhood, growing up in Ireland, his serious battle with depression, how he overcame it, and so much more. He's a fascinating guy. He talked about his lifelong love for his new country and why all Americans should have hope for the future. Jonathon Dunne, a great friend with a powerful message, and our conversation starts right now on At the Mic. Man, I am so grateful that you decided. Here's how this all went down, y'all. I said, "Hey, Jonathon, I know you live in Ireland, but I really want you to be a guest on At the Mic. Can you please just get on a plane, fly over here to do this interview, and then you can get on the next plane out and head back home." That's cool. So thanks for literally just coming here to do... No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate you making time while you're here in America, dude. Thanks.
I know, right? Because I'm only doing your interview and then I'm going back to Ireland. Yeah,
that's right.
There's nothing about 65 events in 85 days in 15 states.
Right.
That's only a nightmare I have.
It's the power of this podcast that lured you here to America. No, you are taking time out in your, I'm going to call it a tour of the country, the United States, on a speaking tour. And I appreciate you doing that. How many events in how many days did you just say?
65 events in 85 days in 15 states.
And you are, constantly trying to convince Americans that their country is still the greatest country on the face of the planet?
Great is not the word I use. I talk about American exceptionalism. So this tour is called Reclaiming America's Narrative, because America, quite simply, is the best story man ever came together to write. But it didn't happen by happenstance or by fluke or by just some miracle. It happened for a certain amount of reasons. There's certain things you did that made you unique and exceptional. And my job as an outsider is to go, hey, y'all are pretty awesome, but you're not just awesome, you're awesome because you did A, B, C, D. And let's get back to going back to A, B, C, D. Let's keep things simple. And a lot of that all boils around the individual. Where every other country based their solutions or every part of society on government, you're the only country that said, no, we're not basing it on government, we're basing it on the people. Let the people decide, let the people innovate, let the people create. Because quite simply, how you've had this technology is you've left people to be innovators and creators, and you've unleashed that American spirit, that unleashed that potential, and people are pursuing what we call the American dream. And it's to remind you and say, yes, you flaws, because I talk about your flaws and I talk about all the problems we face as a world right now, but what are the answers? America is the only country that has the answers.
I love it. We're going to get into more of what the message is that you share as we go along here, and I just appreciate your love of the United States and your willingness to speak to us about us. So thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's one of the greatest thrills in my life, and it's my mission.
Sorry, one of the greatest trills?
Trills.
What's a trill?
It's what Chris Matthews gets up his leg when he thinks of Barack Obama. I get that, but not about Barack Obama. I get it about your country.
I love it. So the accent, obviously, for those that aren't clear, obviously southern Mississippi is where Jonathon Dunne hails from.
Clearly.
So born and raised in Dublin.
Born in Dublin, moved down to the country for a large part of my childhood.
How is it growing up there?
It's fine. You see, the thing about it is I sympathize with some Americans today, and why I do what I do is because I get when you grow up in a world and it's all you've ever known, you kind of, this is your expectation.
Yep.
But when I was growing up, nothing made sense to me. I was always this kid where life would be explained to me and kind of go, well, this is how life is, and this is just what we do. And I'm like, but this doesn't seem right. This doesn't make sense to me. Like one of the first lessons I ever learned. Now it didn't frighten me as a kid, but it frightens me now when I remember what I was taught. First lesson I learned is an economic lesson, but it's also a life lesson. It's not what you know; it's who you know. Just think about that. Imagine ingraining that in a young child. It doesn't matter what you know; it's who you know. Yeah. So you can have the best invention in the world, or the best idea, or the best something. But if you don't know the right people, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hear that a lot in the broadcasting business where people come to me and say, like, how do I get into this business? I have to know someone. And I say, well, it is who you know, actually, in this business. However, that being said, it's the impressions that you leave with the people whose paths you cross. Because I could know everybody in the business, and if their takeaway about me was he's lazy or he's impossible to work with, I mean, that one's accurate. If their takeaway was that I was a garbage employee, then it would work in the opposite direction for me. So who I knew would actually be a negative for me. But I have met people along the way, made good impressions, proven myself, and therefore, yes, to that degree, who I know is a benefit, but I completely understand what you're saying. You're saying that you were, correct me if I'm wrong, born and raised, or it was ingrained to you that that's your way in, is who you know.
Yeah.
Not go prove yourself to people so that they know you as awesome worker guy,
exactly. You have to have the right context.
Right.
But also the innovation. So let me use the analogy you just said about, because I get that question a lot. And you have to understand, this is the beauty of America. In other countries, there's gatekeepers. And you can say in our industry, there is gatekeepers, because you can kind of go, like, who are the establishment? Like, who do you really want to work for if you have our kind of opinion? For me, there's only two companies. There's The Blaze, which we're blessed to work with. You have your show with Pat Gray. I have my show every week called Freedom's Disciple.
People need to make sure they know where to find your podcast. Give us the website and the name of the podcast.
It's Freedom's Disciple. You look on iTunes or on Spotify, and anywhere you are, see them, you'll find Freedom's Disciple. But also then there's the Daily Wire. So there is gatekeepers there. But the beauty of innovation and creativity is you don't necessarily just need to have the gatekeepers. What you can do is, if you've got a message out there, you don't have to understand it's 2021. If you've got a great message and you want to do a show and you want to get involved in this industry, you don't have to come to The Blaze. You don't have to come to the Daily Wire. Right. You can do it by yourself. You can do things. And this is borne out by success. And who's the most popular podcaster right now? It's not a Blaze host. It's not the Daily Wire host. It's not even a host on any network. It's Joe Rogan.
Yep.
A guy who literally is amazing. You know, he talks about MMA, he talks about he has different guests. Why is he unique and why do people love him? Because he's actually willing to have a discussion with lots of people, and obviously he's got big name recognition. People know him as the Fear Factor guy, but you have no obstacles. You know, we have to get out of this mindset that we need to do things the traditional way. Well, I want to work in the media, so I have to go work for the Blaze, or I got to work the Daily War. No, if you've got a message, go out there and share it, get it out. It's free in a lot of these places like Spotify and iTunes and these different places, and then grow YouTube. Or you've got places like our colleague Dave Rubin at The Blaze. He's got locals. Now, obviously, that's merged with Rumble and stuff. But you have all these outlets. You don't need to go to a gatekeeper and say, hey, I have this message, I have this story, I want to get it out, I want to get involved. You don't have to ask anyone's permission. Just do it yourself.
Yeah, when I was a kid growing up, I would record my own radio show in my bedroom, which was ironically in the basement of my parents' house. And I had an audience of one. I mean, my mom would bless her heart, she would listen to my show driving to work and home. You know, I mean, I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the outlet that if when I was a kid, podcasts or the internet was a thing, oh my gosh, you know I would have been all over that. So you're absolutely right. The opportunities are there if you want to take the time to go find them.
But how did they become there? Did some government bureaucrats sit here and go, you know what, it's not fair that mainstream media is the gatekeeper to the media and to telling stories. What we need is to open up. We need to commission a government department to create YouTube or to create iTunes or to create Spotify. No, what happened was people had a God-given right to pursue their happiness and also keep the fruits of their own labor, and then they created a product and service that people wanted to use, i.e. to promote, upload their message, but also that people wanted to use to download the message and listen to all these different podcasts. Because look at the information that we have today. It's amazing.
You're absolutely right. Literally anything you want is at your fingertips. I find it interesting that you grew up in Dublin and Wexford County, right? Did I say that? I mean, Wexford County.
Yeah, it's just Wexford Estate. Yeah, but yeah.
Wexford, I knew I was going to screw something up.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry.
Right? Okay, but I find it so fascinating, and I think it tells to where you are with your love of the United States today, that your earliest memory growing up was traveling to Clearwater, Florida?
Pretty much.
Right? You remember a palm tree? Tell us about that memory, man.
So I gone through that. I couldn't think of the earliest memory, but that was literally the one redefining moment of my life. So I remember, so if you picture an Irish John, he's up 6 or 7 or 8. He just lives in the country. He understands Irish sports. He understands Irish culture. He never really sees anybody of a different race.
He's friends with Bono and
absolutely.
And
all Irish people are friends with Bono, right?
You guys all hang out with you too at the pub, right?
You know what? If I can't tell you the amount of times me and Bono have met up.
How many times have you been asked that? How many times have you been asked that? Do you know Bono?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like, do you know Trump? You know,
right.
It's like, every American knows Trump.
What's
right?
the population of
5
Ireland?
million people.
5 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
sure.
So Bono has 5 million friends.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, so if you picture that Irish guy and you think of the dull, bland food, the dull, bland culture, the dull, bland weather, the dull, bland everything. In case you're not getting the message I'm trying to give to you this podcast, Ireland's very dull and bland.
And green.
And green, absolutely.
Okay, just making sure.
And
don't ruin it all for me, man.
I know. No, it is green. It's very green. Why is it very green? Because we have a lot of rain.
right. And also don't ruin it for me. Little leprechauns all over the countryside, right?
Yeah.
Right?
You know what?
Right?
We have as many leprechauns as the amount of times I've met Bono. That's how many leprechauns we have, right? There's
awesome.
It's so many, it's gigantic.
Yeah, okay,
You know,
I got you.
You know, like, you remember when your congressman was talking about islands literally submerging and turning upside down because there's so many people?
Gosh.
Ireland's at risk of that, but not because of the people, but because of the leprechauns. We're going to literally flip over.
I had no idea. I mean, the things you learn on this podcast.
I know, right?
Okay.
This is educational.
So why were you in Florida when you were a kid?
So some of my extended family moved here and immigrated and got their American dream. So my granny's sister lived over here, and her husband had Parkinson's, and her kids had left the house and stuff, and she was upset and she was lonely, and she had to go to the hospital twice a day to see him because she couldn't care for him. So my granny wanted to go over and see her, but my granny was a granny and wasn't able to go herself. Don't know how the communication happened, but she wanted to go over to see her sister, and the end story was her, my mother, my father, and me get to go to Florida. And I can still picture, I'm closing my eyes right now as I'm on this British Airways flight flying into Tampa, Florida, and I just remember just all the experience of the dull, bland weather, and the door opens and you just get to the door to get off the plane, and the waft of warm air. I was like, what? I never thought this heat was even possible. It was like you open in an oven. It was brilliant. And then back then, because it was the 90s, you didn't have like the gangways like enter the plane now. You had to get off the steps and actually walk on the tarmac at them. And I remember as I'm walking off off the tarmac and all to my right there's these palm trees, and I was like, wow, what are they? And I just fell in love. And I can tell you the first restaurant, because I actually went on this trip. I was in Florida doing speaking, and for old time's sakes I went to my aunt's house because she's no longer with us, and I went to the first restaurant I ever ate in. It was a restaurant called Perkins. It was on the way home. This shows you how much in depth I have. I was in love. This is like one of my defining memories. We went to Perkins. To show you how bad it is, you might laugh at this, I can tell you what I ordered. I ordered a teriyaki chicken bowl. Why do I remember this? Because it was something only America could come up with. It's a salad with chicken teriyaki, but it was served in bread the shape of a bowl. And I was like, you eat the bowl as well? Yeah, you eat the bowl. I was like, this is awesome. So that's my earliest memory of coming here. But ever since that day, and because I can remember every detail about that day, it's clear it left a defining moment. But I was hooked. I was in love at first sight. I was like, I don't know why, but I want to live here. Yeah. And then I got to visit here several times to go over. Same to Clearwater, Florida on vacation, and just fell in love with it. Your people are so optimistic. You're so open. You know, for me, one of the saddest things, because it goes against everything I witnessed, like when I heard America is racist, I was like, that's not what I experienced coming over here, because I can't tell you the first time I met a black person, because it's not something you ever think of. Like,
that's a good point, yeah.
But I can, if you said, you know, put truth serum and you make an educated guess when you saw the first time you saw a black person, I would say in Clearwater, Florida, because one of the things, what I amazed was the routines, because I grew up watching Bill Cosby. I loved the Cosby Show, but it was so natural for us.
Did, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Now, obviously, we have the questions of whether he's a good guy or bad guy. There's a lot of questions about that. But like one of the earliest memories was we'd go to church on Sunday. And you'd go to church and then you do the American thing where you go to the buffet afterwards. Another reason I love America, buffets. This idea you pay one fee and you can eat what you want. Yeah. There's a reason I'm the size I am, right? Okay. Only in America. But you'd have all these people, and you'd have black people and white people and Hispanic, and you wouldn't have any segregation. I'm not saying they were all, you know, we're all huggy and friendly. Sure. But you'd see people at the line and you'd do different things. There was no issues. And like, so then when I hear this, America's a racist nation, I'm kind of going, I'm sure there are some races in America. There are races all around the world. There's people who are idiots and morons and every other word you want to say around the world. But as a general thing, not my experience. And to this day is not my experience. Yeah. And it's so sad how you've been bought on that narrative.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I will say, though, because I've had flights, like you mentioned, where you get off and you have to walk down the tarmac. I mean, congratulations to you for getting to walk on the tarmac in Clearwater, Florida. My experience that really sticks out of walking on the tarmac was that would have been December of 1996 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, about a 50-yard walk. It was, I don't know what, double-digit degrees below zero and windy, and I was on my way to Los Angeles and did not have a coat. So it ain't all pretty when you're on the tarmac. I just want to get that out there. Okay, so that's really great that you had the opportunities to come here to America multiple times as a kid, and that just ingrained in you that one day I'm going to live in America. It's going to be the end game for sure. I'm going to end up here no matter what, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the plan. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. So like if you'd said to that kid, you know, I would have said I would have, you know, worked in a business. I would have done, you know, something. Whatever. I always liked business, but not what I do now. Okay. I've taken a rather dramatic turn, because here's the thing, and here's the funny thing I always tell people that don't get about our industry. What's amazing about our industry is you would think people who are out talking, doing public speaking, doing podcasts, doing media, are all really people. We're not. The vast majority of us are massive introverts. It's like this dirty little secret. Everyone looks at you kind of go, no, really? I'm like, yes, really. We are majorly introverts.
It is so true. I am definitely an introvert.
But yeah, so, you know, my career has totally changed.
Yeah, because you were in business management. That was your educational background, right?
I went and studied because I always thought I wanted to be in business, because I always got on with people in the sense of I knew how to work and I knew the insides of business. My father was a businessman. I've been around business my whole life, and I went to college at night. I never had the opportunity to go to college during the day, but I became a sales and business manager. I went and I got an advanced diploma in business management, so I understand every aspect of business. The economy tanks. You know, obviously you tanked a lot before I lost my job in 2007, 2008. You know, the Great Wall Street crash. I was working at the time in the construction industry, so our crash didn't really happen in the construction industry until about 2011 when I lost my job. And the reason it took a lot longer was Ireland took a couple of months after your crash. It takes a while to filter through the world, but the jobs we were working on in the construction industry had already been pre-approved, prepaid for, and pre-authorized. Oh, wow. So it took a while for for that to happen. But no new contracts were coming on board. And then the company I worked for, it was a Welsh company, they basically said, look, we're pulling out of Ireland, we can't fund you and different things. So I lost my job. And then I had nothing to do. The economy's really bad. I can't go anywhere else. But how I can tell you I've also faced discrimination is I was a sales and business manager. That was my second major management gig. I started speaking out. I wanted to get involved. I started speaking out. I saw my country, the country I love in America, been destroyed. I saw the Tea Party. I was inspired by a rant by Rick Santelli on the Chicago Stock Exchange floor. I woke up, one of my biggest pivot points was actually by a Republican. George Bush, as a business guy, when he came out in the media, I think it was on MSNBC, he said, I've got to destroy the free market to save the free market. I'm like, no, whoa. Just let's rewind that and let's you have to destroy something to save it. How does that work? And then as a business guy, so then I started getting involved and I started talking about different things. And then when I lost my job, I really started speaking out. I started writing, started calling into radio shows, starting doing podcasts.
That's what I want to ask you. How did you start in on the public speaking? And you just like I think you just answered it, right?
Yeah. So the public speaking is different. So I just started writing.
Okay.
And I just looked for opportunities. I would call into like Mark Levin an awful lot, and he'd know me as Irish John, and I would talk about issues and different things, and I'd ring into different shows like our Book Sexton. I was calling in, doing all these different things. Then I started growing up. I became an editor and stuff, and learning through different things. But how I started speaking was, it's actually I'm an introvert, so I would come over to America, and I'd always want to be vacationing here. But what do? I'm not the type of person to sit around the beach. I'm not a pool guy. So I was like, came to Texas one time, and I went, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to some groups and see if they want me to speak.
Nice.
And a few people said yeah, and then they received what they liked the message, and I went, okay, well, from now on, my vacation time is going to be, I'm going to come to America and speak, because I don't have many friends to hang out with and different things. So it's literally like I'm going to go speaking, and I meet up with people, and I just don't. It's just who I am. I'm very private and stuff like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
And this is my 5th tour, but by far the biggest. It's the craziest tour I've ever done, and never to be repeated. ever.
The man's got to sleep at some point, people. Back off.
It's amazing meeting people, and that part is fun, but the traveling, and especially in COVID times where you got to wear these masks on the plane, and everyone's like, oh my God, you coughed, move away from me. It's like, okay, it's a cough. I have allergies.
Those are still legal, I think.
Yeah, I know.
For now.
I know. We don't send you to Auschwitz for coughing.
No, sneezing though.
Yeah. Sure. No. The sneezers we should totally just hang. There is no Fifth Amendment. Literally they're guilty.
That's right. So, some previous jobs you had, you wrote down cinema. Come on, I'm an American. Does that mean movie theater?
Yeah, movie theater. I'm sorry.
Just making sure. Like what? Okay.
So my father's side of the family were big in the entertainment industry.
Oh,
so
nice.
I've met a lot of famous people through it. And growing up as a kid, I wanted to follow in those footsteps. I did every part of the movie theater that you can imagine, from cleaning up to behind the selling the popcorn and the candy to selling the tickets. But also my father was also a projectionist, so at a very early age I was around my father, so I understand how old movies work, in the sense of they'd come in reels, and then you'd have to slice them and put them together and stick them together and put them on the thing, and it all go through all the different functions through the projector, because it wasn't a straight run. It was like lots around loads of different things. If a reel broke, I knew how to fix it. So I was around every aspect of the cinema, because I actually love entertainment. I think it's an amazing forum. It's so sad to watch how that amazing forum has been hijacked by crazy people. Yeah.
Well, okay, that was a good segue, because you've met some celebrities, some Irish presidents. Any of them stick out? Anybody that you want to share an experience with, or politicians that you've met along the way?
I actually have a funny story. So like, you talk about what it was like growing up in Ireland. So I hate Ireland for many reasons, but I didn't enjoy my childhood. I was bullied horrifically. But I also was bullied by teachers. So, since you asked about presidents, a funny story. So I met President Edmund Hillary. He was the president of Ireland in the 1990s. And there was a big function my father helped set up. And we went, and I actually sat in his chair. So it'd be the equivalent of sitting in the Oval Office behind the desk with the phone. And I had pictures of this. So I go back to the school in September, first day of school, and one of the things was, okay, so kids, tell us what you did on your summer holidays. And I told them I went and sat in the president's chair and and had all these things. And my teacher called me out for lying and said that, go sit in the naughty corner, that you shouldn't lie, that's despicable and stuff. Gets better. So, but it has a happy ending. So my parents are called to the school. Your son has a problem. What's the problem? He has a vivid, I'm all for having an imagination, but when it gets to literally lying your pants off, you need to stop this. This is not a healthy behavior. So they went, okay, so what's the lie? Yeah, well, he came up with this story about how he was in Oris Neukron, which is our White House, over the summer, and he sat in the president's chair and sat with him, and also met the president and shook his hand and all these different things, and had a photo op and everything with him. And they went, "That's true." So they went, "No, it's not. Oh, don't defend your child. You know, no one meets the president. This is not happening." So they went and they wouldn't believe my parents, and anyway went home. So what did we do the next day? I came into school with the pictures and I sat them on my desk and went, "There's the evidence." Oh, wow. But I was called out in front of all my classmates and I was mocked. I had to leave that school after like a week.
Wow.
So I've been bullied unmercifully. So when you say to me, I don't like saying it because I'm not a negative person. I'm a Christian. I don't do the insults. But like, you know, if someone says to me, "Do you really hate Ireland?" I kind of go, "Yeah, I can't wait to leave." So on a segue, and a funny note, I got asked the question. I was doing an event in Denton last night and a lady said, "So are you going to miss Ireland?" Because I'm going to be living here, please God, in 2022. And I was like, I better just like think about this for a minute. Like, I don't want to answer straight away. And she's like, "Do you know already know your answer?" I went, "Yep, nope, I'm not going to miss it at all." Not a bit, not a small bit. I'll miss my mother. You asked me as well today, you know, what will I miss about Ireland? My mother, that's it. Will I miss the country? No. I'll never step foot in it if I don't have to.
Yeah. All right. Well, I understand. Or probably I don't. You know, because to your point earlier, it's what you know. And that can work both ways. Yeah. Whether you grow up in a third world country, you only know poverty and hardship. And so and this is no offense to Ireland, but let's say you go from that to Ireland, that's heaven to you, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas in your situation, it's from Ireland to the U.S. Yeah. But in my situation, being born and raised in the United States, this is just what I know.
Yes.
This is what so I may complain about something, but my gosh, how about a little perspective, Keith?
Yeah.
And think about any of the other 200 countries that you could possibly have been born and raised in.
Yeah.
And then you come to appreciate, when you stop and think about it, this country even more.
Well, tyranny has levels. Like, you know, so like you can say, you know, I've heard you talk about Ireland not in a favourable way. But like can you really say it's like, you know, like some countries in the Middle East? No. Can you say they're like what happens in China and the Uyghurs? No. But can you then say, well, is China on the level of North Korea and the way they treat their people? No. There's different levels. There's a hard tyranny and there's a soft tyranny. Mm-hmm. But also there's different levels of tyranny in the sense of what you're told to do and what you're told to say and how you're told to think. But also and this is what, going back to America, I've seen something happen in your country and it's not a positive change. It's where you're openly being told to rat on your neighbours. So I'll give you a funny story. So I'm always asked, you know, the Irish people, I thought you're all freedom lovers. The Irish people are not freedom lovers. COVID happens. Ever since COVID day one, we have polls in our country like you do, you know, testing the mood of the people. Since day one, there's been a poll, rate the government's performance in COVID. Is it done enough, done a little, or done too much? 20 to 25% of people consistently say the government has not done enough. Now, bear in mind, just two of the bullet points on COVID. I can't go more than 3 miles from my house for 5.5 months.
Wait, say that again. Make that clear here.
I could not go more than 3 miles from my house.
3 miles from your house for how many months?
5.5 months.
That is madness.
But 25% of people said that was not enough. But here's where I bring you back to telling on people. So one of the reasons I could leave the house legally was to walk the dog or do exercise around my block. Once I stayed within my little 3 mile radius.
Unreal.
I was walking around the block and I know the neighbours and I'm not the most chatty person. I got to smile and say good morning and, you know, but I won't stop and chat. Yeah. There was this guy, I was walking the dog and there was this guy, and you know when you can see someone's angry, the look in their face, I'm angry. And he had his hand on the wall because we have walls. That's another big cultural difference. On our property are all like Donald Trump walls around. You know, we keep ourselves boxed in and to keep everyone else out. Yeah. But there's a wall in the front of this garden and his hand is leaning on it and he's kind of propping himself up and he's angry. And I went, good morning. Morning. And I just went, you don't seem in the best of form today. What's wrong with you? Them. He points across the road at the house. And I'm like, what's wrong? What's going on? You know, thinking something's wrong. His mother is in the house. I know for a fact she does not live within 3 miles of his house. But also, if she does come, they're supposed to meet in the garden. She's not allowed in the house. I want to phone the police on them. And I'm like, oh dear God. And I just left. I just went, okay, y'all have a great day. I'm not having that conversation. But that mentality of that's just wrong. So literally you had a neighbour wanting to call the police on a fellow neighbour. And what was their crime? That their mother came to visit them.
Unreal.
People will bend over and believe everything. And we need to understand that that's the mentality that we're dealing with and why we need to get the American spirit back. I always say that I give many solutions to your country. One of the principles is you need to go back to your money. Do you know what was on your money originally? There was 3 words. It wasn't in God we trust.
It was hold on, don't tell me. It was mind your business.
Yes, sir. Let us get back to that.
Right. The societal collapse of the West that we are witnessing in our lifetimes right now is breathtaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that should seem so obvious is apparently not anymore. And I think it's easy to blame education in this country, but it's also laziness on the part of, I'll speak for Americans, that don't do their own homework, don't fact check anything, that are just okay with like a proposed law because it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
Or it seems like, yeah, people need this, or they want to be protected and taken care of. Are you kidding me? We have a thing here called the Constitution. If it doesn't follow the rules set in, if it doesn't follow the rules laid out in that document, I'm sorry. I don't care how it feels. It's not lawful, period.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get past this? Because this has been a wake-up call to see how far gone we are. See, this is going to be a good response. I'm waiting for your response here once I finally stop talking, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You look at America as land of the free, home of the brave. We figured it out. You know, we people like me were blessed to live in a country that was founded by heroes that met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1776.
Yeah.
Okay. So from your perspective, you see, hey, you guys have it figured out. Get back to the rule book. From my perspective, I say, yes, I agree with you. We have the rule book, but we're surrounded by people who won't even take the time to learn the rules that we are supposed to be adhering to. And so from my perspective, we're throwing up our hands like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? Do you see hope where I don't? Because I'm that guy that I am not optimistic about the future. Please talk me down, because I'm telling you, man, it just is madness.
Okay, so first point before I give you the hope, there is hope. We need to start correctly identifying the problem. And one thing we need to start doing is we need to remove America from the term Western civilization. Because when you include America with places like Canada, Ireland, England, Europe, what you would call the West, you're doing America and everything it was fought on and founded upon a major disservice. Why can I say this? And let me just give you a simple example. Most people listen to this will like Ricky Gervais. The British actor.
Right.
He toured them. He always tears all actors out. He did one on the Golden Globes a couple of years ago and it went massively viral. Ricky Gervais is arguably, in our part of the world, and would say by conservatives, a major voice for free speech. He is not for cancel culture. He is saying you can say what you want. Here's why America needs to remove itself from Western civilization from that debate. While Ricky Gervais will always be a free speech advocate, he understands that it is the role of government to give free speech. He will just always be the case of saying, we should never, ever, ever do this. We should always have free speech. It should always be protected by the government. You are the only country in the exceptional, what makes you exceptional and unique is this, that you say that is not government's job. It is government's job to protect your right to free speech. Why? Because it's not government giving it to you. It's from your creator. You were born with this.
Yep.
When you have that, that is one reason you're exceptional and unique. There are many other reasons. When you include America with the rest of the Western world, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but do you want to discuss that or do you want to move on to the hope?
No. I do want to keep discussing this because I was just going to jump in there and just say, no, I'm with you. Absolutely. Our rights come from God.
Yes.
Plain and simple. In government.
Only nation to ever even discuss this, let alone identify it in your founding documents.
And the government is put in place by man.
Yes.
To protect those rights that come from God.
Yes. Second reason you're exceptional. That's the role of government. Every other role of government is whatever we see fit and whatever the election says.
But what percentage of Americans could I go out here on the street right now and convince that our rights do come from God and that is the proper role of government instead of, the rights come from the government? Because along with the deteriorating educational system in this country is the fact that there is a much less belief in God than there was 250 years ago. And therefore, when you can't even agree on the premise we're starting from, help. What do you do then?
So the problem is, this is a very layered question. We can take it whichever way you want to take it.
Go for it.
We quite simply put, what is my job? So I wear tags around my job. I have finally found the mission. My mission is John 1:8. What does John 1:8 say? I am to testify to your existence of greatness, but I am not the greatness itself. That's butchering it, but it's a lot more simple. My job is to testify to America's greatness. What is that? It's a story. You have forgotten the art of storytelling. Even simple things like I say, because I'm talking about reclaiming America's narrative, and people are like, why should I care? Look at all the issues going on. Why is the narrative so important? And I always use this example. Martin Luther King. When was the last time you ever heard anyone talk about Martin Luther King and give him his full and correct title? Because he was a Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Why has the Reverend been dropped?
Right.
Because of narrative. We have stopped telling stories, but also we have stopped, and we are complicit in this in the media, of encouraging people. So you asked about hope. What is the difference between America and the rest of the world? Everyone else will we can all identify problems. We may agree on some problems, we may disagree on some problems, right? But we can identify problems, and you'll see a common theme between left and right. And let me use a person in your country who most people listening to the show will hate, Bernie Sanders. I actually agree with about 50% of what Bernie Sanders says, because when he comes to identifying problems in society, the guy is pretty actually accurate. Where he's horrible and he's never suggested one thing right is where it comes to solutions. And this is the difference. You see, every other nation will say, yes, there's this problem. We should get government to fix it. Let me back this up with a story to show you how much it can happen in pulpits. Ireland, prior to COVID, had a major issue. It's amazing what COVID fixed. It fixed this major issue because there's been zero stories about this major issue that dominated the news in Ireland prior to COVID. What was that issue? Homelessness.
Okay.
Homelessness. Imagine COVID happens and then we just thought there's no homeless problem anymore.
Yeah.
All of a sudden COVID comes and every person who was homeless on the streets and all this disaster and all these thousands of people sleeping rough on the streets every night just magically went away. Thank you,
Also,
COVID.
Not only that, but the homeless that still remain never get COVID, apparently.
I know, it's amazing.
How does that
but
happen?
You have a priest in Ireland. He's a Catholic priest. His name is Father Peter McVerry. And he does a lot of work for the homeless. But when he does interviews, he's very well known. He will always say, my church is doing all this work. It shouldn't have to do it. It's the government's job to fix the homeless crisis. So what is the problem? We can correctly identify the problem a lot of times, but what is the solution? Every other nation says it is government's job because that is why we pay our taxes. What solves America's problems? Is it government or is it your people? You want hope. Your people are starting to wake up, and there's so many major stories that have happened over the last couple of months. And I've disagreed with conservatives, by the way, and I've gotten the flack for this recently. First story. There's a major problem in your country with slaughterhouses. 4 companies do 80% of the slaughtering. And I saw conservatives go, this is not fair, this is a monopoly. First of all, as someone who believes in language, when you have 4 companies owning 80% of something, that is not a monopoly. That is no way, that's like fake news story number 1. But they said, what's the solution? We need government to break these up. We need to get government involved.
Ugh.
And what happened? Nothing. What happened to solve this problem? A rancher raised up and said, you know what? We're not waiting on the government. We are going to do it. And they raised $300 million and are setting up their own independent slaughterhouse in Nebraska. What is the answer? Your people. Second story of hope. University of Austin. We all would agree, even Bernie Sanders would probably say, our education system in America is not good. There's problems. Now, we might disagree on what the problems are, but we would universally agree education is a problem. What is the solution? I've seen people on the right, on both sides of the aisle, saying we need government involved, we need to teach this, we need to teach God, we need to do this, we need to do that. No, the answer is you solve the problem yourself. You create the University of Austin, and you get people from all levels, where you've got liberals and conservatives coming and saying, we're going to teach all sides and we're going to have free and open debate. You talk about the power of wanting hope in your nation. If I'd said to you 5 years ago, hey, by the way, we're going to have some common ground with Steven Pinker, you would have probably said I was high. If I said to you, we're going to be potentially working on the same side as someone like Jonathon Hyatt, you would have went, nah, what world is this? Because the left have so overplayed their hands. Yeah. But then let me give you one political story just to back up the power of a story can only happen in America. You have a system of politics that's unique. You have a primary system, but you also have a dissent voice where you can write someone in on a ballot. If when I vote in Ireland, I will never vote for an Irish politician because they're all corrupt. My best option is Hillary Clinton. They get worse from all the way. The worst one is probably Bernie Sanders. Actually, no, the worst one will be Bill Ayers. Right, so they're my choices: Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, or Bill Ayers. I'm not voting for any of them. I'm not putting my name. So for the last 5 years, I have voted, or the 5 elections, I think I voted for Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Jesus, and Daffy Duck.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
What happens to that?
How did Jesus do in the primary? Sorry.
I think he got 1 vote.
Oh,
but
no.
they never count that as a vote for Jesus or a vote for Mickey Mouse.
Right.
It's just a spoiled vote, as if you've just ruined it.
Okay.
But my vote is counted as I turned up, but no, I didn't
That's
vote
good.
for anyone.
Yeah.
Right? In America, you have a write-in candidate. Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, if I said to you the following: there's a major Democrat running for office, and this Democrat is run and endorsed by Chuck Schumer and AOC, and their major opponent is not opponent of a political party, it's a write-in candidate, would you have said that person would have got more than 5% of the vote? More than 10% of the vote? Spoiler alert, that person won.
Yeah.
Only in America.
Mayor of Buffalo.
Amen. Why am I sharing these 3 stories? This is when you are down right now. Your country is hurt, you're beaten up, and you're dejected. And these are the stories that are happening right now when when most people are saying the glass is half empty. Can you imagine if you start returning to the American people I love and I grew up with, where you start thinking that the glass is half full, and you start looking for opportunities, and you start just remembering, and this ties back to a point we made a few minutes ago, know your history. So let me address this question. America's best days are behind her. You need to start teaching your history and realize this is the biggest load of bullcrap you've ever been taught. You're the country and you're the people that had the audacity at your founding, where you haven't got muskets, a lot of you, haven't got shoes, haven't got the correct bedding, to have the audacity to come together and say, we're going to take on the superpower of the day, which are well-trained and well-armed. You didn't have muskets, many of your soldiers. They had cannons. You didn't have bedding and shoes. They were so fancily dressed, they had their red coats with their shiny lapel buttons. You're the country that said, we're going to take these on and take them on in a fight. Everyone else would have said, you're crazy, you'll never do it. You won. To prove it wasn't a fluke, you did it again in 1812. You're the country and the people who've overcome slavery, segregation, won World War I, won World War II. When the world is at a tipping point crisis where we were both alive in the 1980s, where you had Russia and America pointing nuclear weapons at each other that could destroy the whole world in less than 15 minutes, you're the country and people who won it without a rocket being fired. You're the country and you're the people that have explored everything from the swamp to the stars. And to show you that this message is still apt, that only things can happen in America, one of your famous people here, whether you love him or hate him, is Elon Musk, is a South African. He came to America, and what is he talking about doing right now? Colonizing Mars. That can only happen in your nation. You need to start looking like the glass is half full and remembering your history and saying, yes, we face bad days, but also guess what? We will overcome them because we've overcome them in the past. But also, we have a duty in the media to tell who this enemy is. This enemy is perfectly the Wizard of Oz, if you know that story. Mm-hmm. That story is where you see the wizard or you hear about the wizard and he speaks very deep and I am the great and powerful Oz. And everyone's like, oh my God, how can we do this? We can't do it. I haven't got a heart and I haven't got courage. I can't do this. This enemy's so powerful. And then you look behind the curtain at the end of the movie and you see a little timid old man. Does that remind you of anyone in America in 2021? You see, we need to start encouraging people. I make that as a joke, but it's so true.
Yeah.
This enemy is not strong, is not powerful. This enemy is nothing more than a magic trick. And we need to start acting accordingly. But also, I bring it back to another point you raised early. Christians. Mm-hmm. We need to start acting like we are Christians and understanding one fundamental principle. We have won. And start acting with such confidence that we know we have won and we are prepared to go all in. How many Christians are prepared to go all in today? Or how many Christians think the job of a Christian is to turn up to church on a Sunday and listen to a pastor speak? Our job is to teach the good news. That's what Jesus told his disciples. Go share the good news. And this is where I bring you back to America. Our job, teach the good news. Don't teach the bad news, teach the good news. And I'll tell you why this is an American principle. 2 numbers changed your world, 27 and 358. 27 was the number of issues Thomas Jefferson wrote with the king. At 27 issues, there is no reconciliation, there is no counselling, there is no coming back together and working it out and petitioning for redress. It was clear a divorce had to happen. But what does 358 represent? The number of words written in your Declaration of Independence before one issue with the King. And to prove this is your answer, if you think of a person who knows not much history, who's very ignorant, the AOCs, she knows the cliches like we all do on Independence Day. All men are created equal. That's the biggest load of garbage. It's men, not women. Or, we pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honour. Imagine I said to you right now, I want you to word for word quote me just one of the 27 issues in the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson wrote. Could you do it?
Oh, you're asking me?
Could you do it?
Yeah, I think so.
Go for it.
Okay, so...
word for word, not verbatim.
No. Oh, no. I couldn't do that. No.
Why is that? Because it's not an American principle to tell the world what you're against. It's an American principle to tell you what you're for, i.e. share the good news. And what we need to do is start sharing stories, like Jesus did, parables of why America can overcome this and reinforce it. I'm not saying it's easy, because people say, well, you think it's easy, you're dismissing this enemy. No, if you listen to my podcast, I speak about the Great Reset a lot. I'm fully aware of the problems, but I also see the opportunities.
Yeah, and I want to mention very clearly here, if you like what you hear, Freedom's Disciple, here he is, Jonathon Dunne. You'll check out his podcast, and you'll get a new love for the United States. So check this out, y'all. Obviously, the magic of editing, it doesn't appear that I had walked away from the microphone there for a few minutes, but I went looking for a Band-Aid because while you were talking, I had this little cut that had scabbed over. I know this is gross sounding, right here on my elbow, and I was mindlessly picking at it, and I think Jonathan's eyes lit up like, oh my gosh, you're literally bleeding out here. So anyway,
I was like, don't die just to do this interview, man.
Right. I walked across the hall. I cannot find a Band-Aid to save my life in this joint. And you mentioned, as I came back into the room here, where's the health and safety officer? Oh my gosh, tell me that's some bureaucratic nightmare that invades businesses in Europe, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you got health and safety training. You got to have somebody
on site?
No, well, it's part of your job. So, you could be the health and safety officer. It's just part of your responsibility.
Oh, okay, but it's a government mandate.
But if they have,
each office has somebody.
And you go through training and different things. Oh, it's wonderful.
Okay, what if that person goes on vacation? What happens?
I'm guessing there's a backup to health and safety.
Oh my gosh.
And then there's a backup to the health and safety.
Okay. You worked at a golf course for a time?
Yeah, I did.
I've done that as well. What did you do?
I was the attendant who you paid money to do stuff and go and play in the course. It was great.
Yeah.
And then my lunch break, of course, was playing golf. It was awesome. So I used to play a lot of golf. So
yeah, that sounds very similar to the job that I had. It's moving carts up so that the members could get on.
Yeah.
And stuff. Now I played golf all the time as well. However, I did not get better. I mean, are you pretty good at the links there?
I used to be. I won one of the coolest things in my own little personal accolades was in, I think it was 2011 or 2012. I was golfer of the year in the place I was. But also I was the most dominant golfer to ever play. I was the youngest golfer to ever win that award. I don't know. I don't know if these ever stood, but yeah, I went one summer. I played a lot. I played 4 times a week, and I came really good. And I won a lot of events in a row.
You still get to play it all?
No, I don't have time. But also I just don't have the time, and I also powerlift now. So
I don't have time, and I also don't have the time. But you powerlift, right?
Yeah, so I haven't done it now since September, but I'm training to be a professional powerlifter. So,
oh wow!
Because I love weights, it's my little safe space. But I haven't trained since late August on this tour. I intended to do in the gym, but 65 events in 85 days on paper sounds like a lot of fun.
That's enough powerlifting right there.
Yeah, because even for my fiance, because she sees what goes on behind the scenes, she's like, I honestly don't think people get what you're doing right now, because they see 65 events in 85 days and they kind of go, that seems like a lot, but I see you, the talking, the media, doing your own show, booking hotels, booking flights, car hire, going all this stuff. It's literally 16 hours, 17 hours every day, non-stop.
Wow.
And so, you try and get in the gym on that. And after all the, I tried at the start. I did a few, in September, I actually worked out a bit. But, since October, I just couldn't because
I think it fits.
Tired.
It fits in perfectly with your golf thing. I don't have time, and I don't have time.
Yeah.
So tell us about Tanya, your fiance. How exciting, huh?
I know, it's amazing, right? So, and this is, it's not to make this about me, but this is a message of hope. So I've been doing all this work, and it's not really work. I'm a volunteer, so I do speaking tours for free. I invested my life savings of 10 grand to do this tour. I've done, this is my 5th speaking tour. I've done this show. I've been at the Blaze like 7 years. I've done 300 odd shows with you. I've done all this writing. So this was my literally burning the boats moment. Because I was like, something's got to happen. Because, I can't get a job above minimum wage in Ireland. That's just the situation it is, because what I say is so unpopular. So I know about discrimination. But literally when I go back, because of COVID, because of the economy, but also because of what I'm doing right now, I know it's highly unlikely that I will never ever work in Ireland again. So I was kind of like, this is my burning the boats moment. Either I'm going to go back to Ireland and starve. Now granted, that'll take a long time for me to die from starvation because I'm a bigger guy, insert flat joke here, or something's going to break and I'm going to find a way here. So my beautiful fiance, who I've known since 2015, we were friends. We hung out, we met up in a group a couple of years ago and we had fun, and basically, because she knows my past, she knows who I work for, but she also knows my issues with depression and suicide. To get here legally, despite your borders being wide opening, I had to go to Turkey and isolate for 15 days. So she was checking in on me twice a day, knowing I had those issues. Because isolation for a depressive person is not a good situation. I highly recommend against doing it. But she was checking in on me, and you can't just have a conversation. Hey, just checking in. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. It would lead to more stuff, and we'd be texting and talking, and we just became really close. And then, so I'm rather clueless. I haven't dated a lot in my lifetime. I've probably dated maybe 4 or 5 girls, like not very long and stuff. It's just never been, I've never had the knack to, ironically, I can talk and I have an accent, and just to get with girls is just not really possible for me, or just never, I'm very clueless and stuff. But she basically said, hey, so, when you get stateside, can we meet up alone? And I was like, sure, absolutely, no problem. I'd love to. I'm in Oklahoma the first week in November. And she was like, okay. And then a couple of days later, she went, so can we meet up alone? And I was like, sure, I'm a man of principle. I said we'd meet up. I definitely will. I'm in Oklahoma this week. Then she asked me a third time. 3 is a biblical number, which is very funny because we're both Christians. She basically like, can we meet up alone? And I was like, I'm not saying no to you. I definitely will. But basically, she got very blunt with me and said, hey, are you ever going to ask me out? And I was like, you want me to? And like I sent the wide-eyed emoji. She tells the joke where even when I was saying it to you, my reaction, the emoji was, that big, the face with the big eyes. Yeah. I was like, you want me to? And she's like, hell yeah. Like I asked you to meet up alone 3 times. But in my defense, I'm clueless. I fully admit, and I have major flaws in that department and in other departments as well. But most people, like I've met a lot of people alone. I've met with groups of people, and then they go, hey, I'd love to just pick your brains and can I meet up for a beer with you? You thought it was
something like that? All innocent?
Yeah, because when you meet as a group, it's fun.
Yeah.
But some people kind of want to share the story with you, or want to ask your advice. They want to get into the industry or something or whatever. I knew she didn't want to do that, but she just wanted to talk or just hang out. And I was like, sure, just 1-to-1 rather than as a group. But so I asked her out. She said yes. We got on well. We were nervous because we were friends for so long. When you're friends from 2015 and then you start having feelings for someone, the first time, like we both admitted it, like when we first met up on a date, like we were kind of like, this might be awkward. Like, do you shake your hand? Do you give her a hug? That type of, we're friends for so long, is it going to be weird kissing you? But it wasn't. I met her in a parking lot of the hotel I was staying in. We went out to a meal and she ran right into my arms and gave me the biggest kiss. And I was just like, this is amazing. It feels awesome. She's my best friend. I do not deserve her. But just getting back to the message of hope, of doing all the stuff I've done, I've been trying for 17 years to get to this country legally. This tour, because of going all in, not only in 2022 am I going to say I'm an American and have that right to say I'm an American, but I also get my American dream, but I also get the dream girl, because Tanya is perfect for me. She is the most amazing, kind, beautiful, sweet, funny person I have ever met.
You guys are going to be living in Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
I'm so glad. That's a beautiful state.
Yeah, absolutely. So, But what is interesting, so I've actually asked a friend of mine who lives in Oklahoma, I'm like, hey, so you need to give me like the political gist of why Texans hate Oklahoma, because I said it to someone. I had a conversation. Yeah, oh, you do. Well, so I'll tell you a funny story.
The football for sure.
Yeah, but even the rhetoric. So, because I didn't get this, because I knew there was a football rival, I'm not totally clueless, about, the Sooners and A&M and the Aggies and stuff like this.
And Longhorns.
And the Longhorns. And I was at an event and I told the thing about an American dream. They all went, yay, is in Texas. Oh, I'm so happy for you. We know about your story. This is amazing, brilliant. Texan comes up to me after, so where are you going to live? I'm like, Oklahoma. Oh, I was happy for you. I'm not happy anymore that you're going to be. But here's the thing. Here's what he called it. I'm not happy you're going to be living in God's armpit. What? And I was like, I said Oklahoma, not New York, not Michigan, not Boston or Massachusetts. You know, obviously Boston's a city. I'm a Yankees fan, so I always say Boston. But Massachusetts, you know, or Michigan or any of these states. I said Oklahoma. Yeah, it's God's armpit. I went, okay. So I'm like, so I said it to my friend Susan. She's like, oh yeah, we've been called that before. And I'm like, really? That's really descriptive.
I've never heard that. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you're a big reader, would you say?
Not a good reader, but I am reading a lot. Yeah, I'm always researching.
All right.
I have ADD, so when I read something, I go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, me too, man. And then I end up reading. That's the thing. I end up reading half a dozen books at the same time and finish none of them.
I know.
Philadelphia, Here I Come is the favorite book of yours.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
One of your favorites, and just the story of this. This is what it said. I mean, it's a play based in Ireland. And a guy leaving his dad to go live in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That sounds oddly familiar.
It is. It is a, you know, I'm very consistent in my stuff, but there's a load of famous stories. So it's basically a sketch where you've got this guy called Gar, and he's having imaginary conversations with himself, and it's based the night before he's supposed to fly out to Philadelphia. It's a famous play, and his dad and him don't have the best relationship, so he breaks up all these skits in his head of how he's going to break the news to his dad, and you know, then he has skits where the dad's going to tell him he misses him, and you know, getting uncomfortable, and then but it's just hilariously funny, and if it's acted out right, it's very good, and then eventually it ends the next day where he's going off, and you don't actually know whether he actually ever gets to Philadelphia, because deep down he actually loves his father, so there's a lot of nuance to the play and stuff, and he doesn't really want to leave. He's caught with the glamour eyes. Now obviously me, I'm like, see ya.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's not the parallel that I thought it was.
Up to the end it is.
Right,
but it was one of the books I studied when I was growing up, and it's just a fun book. Because every other book I read, I can't say there's favorites, because everything else I read, I don't read you know, for fun. I read for research and stuff. So like I'm reading, you know, stuff. And like, can you really say, as much as I love him, but like, you know, reading like Adam Smith, can you really say that's my favorite book? Like when you asked me that, I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, well, like I love Adam Smith, but it's not exactly my favorite book. Or like Frederick Bastiat, The Law. Like, you know, all these books are, and even then, like, so one of my other favorite books is, but I hate the title, and you'll understand why, because you actually know American history. I love de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, but I hate the title. Because America's not a democracy.
I'm with you.
I'm like, you know, so. But then also, like, some of my inspiration comes from some of your writings and stuff. So, like, I read, you know, a lot of Thomas Jefferson's writings and George Washington. Thomas Jefferson's writings are amazing, because he is clearly the pen of the founding fathers. Like, he was so articulate, but he also was such a great storyteller. But also, like, you know, like Thomas Paine, The American Crisis, you know, all those different things. You know, I always say, I was going to say them in the things as answers, like, you know, Washington's farewell address, it literally highlights every problem that you face as a nation right now. It's amazing how someone who lived 200 years ago when he's leaving office could say, hey, I got to say this to y'all, and 200 and odd plus years later we're actually experiencing every problem he predicted if we didn't act.
It's a very good point. Yeah.
So
no, you're right. You know, I look through these questions that I ask, and I think as sometimes when I'm looking at them, man, I don't know, that's a tough question. I don't know how to answer that one. And the one I'm getting hung up on really is your favorite app. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, what would mine be? But anyhow, yours is YouTube.
Yeah.
Why are you such a big fan of YouTube?
Because there's so many amazing things on it. I don't have many apps on my phone, so like I deleted social media from my phone. It's the best thing you will ever do. That literally, you know, when I know when people text me or phone me, it's because you have my number and I want to hear from you, rather than the constant ding 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 ding. But the reason I say YouTube is because I go onto YouTube a lot, so because I'm a storyteller, so I'm always looking to improve. So like I watch a lot of Jordan Peterson online.
Yeah, you're a big fan of his book too.
Yeah, I love him. I try and model myself. I wouldn't say I have heroes, but I try and model myself after certain people. Like obviously Glenn is a big inspiration to me, my boss. You know, people like Jordan Peterson who are more calm and more well thought out, and it's not angry. But like one of my ultimate favorite people is Milton Friedman. I don't know if you've ever watched any of his videos, but I love where they'll show these videos of where he's sitting in front of a class of people, and like, you know, have all these liberal, even back then you had all these liberal students, and like, I've got the question that's going to get you.
Right.
And because I say this is what America needs right now, and you've got this old man who's dressed like an old man, and
answering
he's just
with a smile,
and never ever raises his voice, and is always like, no son, this is why you're wrong. And then you can see them like, oh crap, I thought I had him. You know, that way, and then another person will get up. But it's been killed with a smile. And I think we need that, but also like just to have that confidence, because here's the thing that frustrates me with conservatives who get angry. We have the winning message.
Right.
Even Karl Marx, the father of communism, spoke about freedom. That's how powerful that word is. Now, he perverted it and said freedom from the bourgeoisie, but he said the word freedom because he knew the power that word holds. We have the winning message. We should not be the angry ones. We should be the ones going, we're spreading the good news. Hey, guess what? Let's remove your shackles. You don't need anybody telling you what to do. You don't need an overlord. And start sharing that message in the way it should be shared. We should not be angry. It's the left who should be angry. Why? Because they're the ones who have the losing message and they have to compensate. We don't. We should be the happy warriors. Or if I may quote the great Thomas Paine, it's time to be a winter soldier and not a sunshine patriot.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. Okay. 5 possessions. You could keep only 5 possessions. What would they be? 1519 Geneva Bible.
Yes.
Wow, man. That's pretty
That's
cool.
even prior to, I have a copy of that. It's an amazing Bible. So it's, it's very hard to read. And one of the things I love to do, and I'm not smart enough to really understand and appreciate everything, so I still have to read the modern day Bibles. But, as someone who, appreciates the power of language and stuff, so that, the one story I always tell is how I'm always checking everything. So like, what's the 5th commandment to most people? In Ireland, it's thou shalt not kill. Okay. That's actually not the commandment. It's thou shalt not murder.
Yeah.
And you have to understand it's just one little word, and you think they mean the same thing. What's the big difference? But it is a major, significant difference. So I always love going back and reading. But also I always highlight and say, look how dumb we've actually become as a society. Like, they read this Bible, and like, I'm not saying, I'm not going to say I'm the smartest pants. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I'm clearly not anywhere near the dumbest. I struggle to read it, and I read the Bible, and I know the parallel verses, and I'm like, what's this word now? This is very different. Just to highlight, but also to constantly know something. Because if I read something in the Bible, I'll read, because I read the new version of it. And you're like, that doesn't quite seem like. I remember, and I can go back to one of the oldest Bibles and say, actually, no, it's not. This is how much it's changed. And then you can have a debate of whether it's changed for the better or for the good, or which is more accurate. But at least I always have that resource. You've
got the U.S. founding documents. Leather bound?
Yeah, I've got an amazing book. It's one of my prized possessions. I don't have many prized possessions. It's literally it's a majorly thick book. It's the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. And just to show you how important this document was to your founding documents, it's finished with Washington's farewell address. And it's leather bound, and it's lovely, and I hate looking at it because it's so pristine. It's like, I don't really, because you're always afraid you'd smudge it and stuff. It's not like, you don't want any dog ears on this book. It's really like, it was expensive that I bought it.
That is cool.
But it's one of my prized possessions. And if I can only bring one, I love all your founding documents, so I had to bring one book. That's the book.
Well, since you're such a big fan of the founding fathers, who would be your favorite then, if you had to pick just one?
Easy, Washington.
Why is that?
Character, integrity. Just was so humble. How many people, I always share this as a story of how much you've changed. Imagine a job, you're going to hire someone for a massive job like a CEO or something really important to your business. And on acceptance, the person says, I do not find myself worthy to the position I've been given. He said that in front of Congress when he was the leader of the Continental Army in a famous speech. He was so humble, but also so resolute. He had nothing to gain. He risked everything. But also, imagine risking, there's so many George Washington stories, but imagine risking everything, and then you go and fight the British, and then you lose, and then you got to retreat, and then you got to lose, and then you got to retreat. Everything from, all the stories about how many times he was shot and never killed, the way he prayed, the picture of Valley Forge, the way he, ultimately went home after he served. He could have been your king.
Right.
He could have been one of the most evil, despotic people. He went home.
They would have let him.
Yeah, absolutely. No one would have stopped him because he's the great general. You don't have an America without him. But then he goes home, and I always share these stories about even down to how he acts. So it's 10 years he's gone home, and everything, America started to grow, and you're in Philadelphia discussing the Constitution. It goes into crisis. No one can agree on anything. They send for George Washington. George Washington has the knock on the door. I always say, think about your favourite politician now out of limelight for 10 years. Do you think they'd be on CNN? Do you think they'd have staffers? Do you think we'd have trending on Twitter, get George Washington to Philadelphia? He didn't. He continued with his own life. But when he gets the knock on the door, Mr. Washington, sir, the Constitution Convention in Philadelphia is in crisis. You are needed. He didn't say, hell yeah, you need me. Of course you need me. I'm the great General George Washington. You're all a bunch of fools. How does he respond? My God, what more does my country demand of me? And then the third story about how he acted on character. When he got there, how did he act? He could have said, I gave you your opportunity to get this done. You called me, I didn't call you. Now get in line, kiss my ring. I know I left power 10 years ago, but it's now time to make me king. He didn't. He wasn't even the most vocal. He said very little. He was just that calming presence, that leadership, that resoluteness. But then also the famous quote, and it's a great story. And this, this is what we need to start sharing with people. Do you know what he said? What the first thing he said in Philadelphia was? Because he didn't say a lot in Philadelphia. He said one famous quote. So he's sitting down one day. There's a debate, and it's not going well. And he stands up, and it looks like he's about to speak, and the whole room goes silent. What's he going to say? Is he actually going to say something? And this is what he said. This is what we need to tell Americans today. Let us raise to a standard to which the wise and honest can repair. The rest is in the hands of God.
I love it.
What does that mean in 2021? We got to start working like it depends on us, and let's pray like it depends on Him, because America is a divine providence nation. And if we do all of these things right and we get that divine providence, we make America the best comeback story since Jesus Christ. That is why he's my favourite. And it isn't even close. And I love Thomas Jefferson's pen. I will openly admit, if you said, whose writings, if I could only bring one set of writings with me, who would I bring? It's not George Washington, it's Thomas Jefferson, because his pen was so amazing. But you can't have America without Washington.
Yeah, I agree completely. You'd keep your iPad, presumably just so you could have YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, but also emails and to communicate with people. And
okay.
I'm not going to lie, Tanya played a role in that. She's got an iPhone, so we could iMessage each other and keep in contact. So obviously, I'd love her to be with me, but I'm guessing that she's not a possession. But, she's not. She's not mine.
I got it. Barbells and weights. I mean, what you say you power lift? What's the most weight you've ever lifted in your life? Got to have a personal best.
I have, but I can't remember. 600 and something pounds or something.
Oof.
Yeah,
that's what I used to do. You were in a movie once?
Yes.
How'd that happen?
The famous movie Michael Collins with Liam Neeson, and Julia Roberts was in it as well. So there's a company over there called Equity, and my father, when he retired because he was older, went and he had many jobs. One of them, he was an extra in like the local sitcoms and stuff.
Oh, nice!
And he got me involved in it. It was a great way of earning money because he got in, and then he started just being in the pub and in restaurants, just the casual people. Then he brought the car and he got extra money. Then he brought our dog and got extra money. But then movies started coming to Ireland, and he had contacts. So Michael Collins was in it. If you actually look at the scene at the start of Michael Collins, you'll see my father. It's where Michael Collins is given the passionate speech, and he's talking about freedom and our future Irish Republic, and then the British come in and storm. Well, there's an old man hanging for dear life onto the signpost, because literally what we were told is he'll give the speech, then the English would come in, and then we kind of like fake fight with each other. My father's like holding onto the signpost for dear life. His son is in the middle of it, nowhere to be seen, is literally in the middle fighting the British. Come here, you British person! I want to get you. I know you're only an actor, but I want to fight you. So I'm not. I can't be seen in it, but it was a lot of fun. I earned £20 back then for that day's work. It was fun.
That's cool.
We got to meet, I know we met Julia Roberts. She was amazing because, back then, I don't know whether she was in Pretty Woman yet or had been in Pretty Woman, but like she was a big name and like it was really cool. She was as beautiful as you might think.
So you're right. So Liam Neeson, Julia Roberts, obviously, but you've also met Kevin Spacey, and you list that as meeting him. That's your most embarrassing moment?
Yeah, that's a funny story. So my dad had many hats. He had lots of jobs. So my dad had like his own company, and he was also the founding house manager of like the big concert hall in Ireland. And then he retired, and then he actually retired for 6 months, and then basically, you know what, I don't like retirement. I don't like doing nothing during the day. And he went and got more jobs than when he was a young man working and doing his own business. So one of the jobs he had was he was a projectionist. I told you earlier on about making up all the things. So he had this he was working for this private cinema where like movie critics would come in and watch it, or movie stars would come in if they were passing through town and they wanted a private screening. Like kind of Glenn going to private screenings.
Yep.
He would do this. And I would go to him and I'd help him out. But I was playing football that day and I was absolutely messy. Back then I actually had hair and I used to slick it back, and I used to care about my appearance. I don't really anymore. But I was playing football one day, and when I came home, I was messy, I was sweaty, the hair was all over the place, I had muck on my cheek and everything. And he goes, hey, there's a movie on tonight in the thing, do you want to come help me? And it's A Bug's Life. And it hadn't even been out released in the theatre yet. Okay. And I was like, sure. He says, you'll probably like it, it's good. And I'm like, who's it for? He's like, I don't know, it's no one in particular. So I go to the thing, and we had a routine where because I wouldn't be seen around people and different things, or so the people that's critic could come in, because you don't want to be seeing a kid when you're getting a private screening. You don't want to see a kid there. You kind of want to think you're the only one there. So we had a routine. I'd go help him, and then I'd sneak in and watch the movie. So anyway, he watched the movie, the person watched the movie. There was a man and a woman, that's all I could see, a man and a woman with blonde hair. And I leave, and then go back up to my father at the end of the movie, and we come back down, and who's in the hall? It's Kevin Spacey. Now, the reason it's an embarrassing moment is because Kevin Spacey was one of my idols growing up. I loved him in The Usual Suspects, all the different things, LA Confidential. I thought he was a really good actor, and I really was a massive fan of him back then. And even to this day, like, even not to this day, but, you know, and even in recent time, like House of Cards is the acting in that, like, it is so real, like, you can't fake that. Obviously, he's a complete dirtbag, you know, we all know this again. Like, I like the complete dirtbags. Kevin Spacey, Bill Cosby, you know, there's a team here for the Christian guy who talks about principles to like. But anyway, I get out and I see him and I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to tell you it's Kevin Spacey coming tonight. I was like, gee, you couldn't have told me that before. I would have gotten to the shower. I wouldn't have my hair all over the place. And then my father goes, oh, you know, Kevin, this is my son, Jonathon. He's like, oh, that's nice to meet you. And he's like, hey, would you get in a picture of my son? I'm like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, you couldn't have told me that I was going to meet Kevin Spacey, one of the people I like. And it was embarrassing. I felt sorry for him. He was really nice about it, you know, but this kid with hair all over the place, muck on his cheek. And, you know, clearly, like, I looked like, you know, I looked horrible.
I got to start mixing in the word muck.
Muck.
Let's see here. There was a dark time in your life where you were planning on committing suicide.
That's a nice segue.
Yeah. Tell us about that, man.
Suicide, it's a very passionate issue for me, and mental health is a big issue. And it's a big issue in our society, and it's an issue that is not correctly diagnosed by many people, and it's only got worse because of COVID, where we're telling people. And life will beat you down, and life will make you feel sad and bad, and it will, you know, we all face it, you know, whether we lose someone, whether we lose a job, whether things are not going well in our life. Ultimately what happened for me was I was just in a very bad place because I've been trying to get here for so long, and I've always kind of suffered with depression in the sense of what's amazing about my brain is I am so positive about America, but if you start asking me about myself, I'm very negative. And that's the amazing thing about Tanya as well, how I know, because she's changing my brain and changing the way I think about it. But she, you know, when someone says that about yourself, like, you know, I'm not good looking, or I'm not good at what I do, people go, yeah, you're just looking for a compliment. You're just shifting for a compliment, or you're just saying that. But that's how we generally feel. And it's words don't solve that. Like, you know, if I tell you I'm feeling really bad about myself, what do you say? What can you do? There's very little that you can do. So what happened with me was I was looking, kind of going, look, I'm doing all this work. I'm doing the show for the Blaze. I'm doing all this writing. I've done all these speaking tours. I've never had a break. I'm struggling financially. And then the question, and you go down this tunnel. I'm condensing the story a lot, but you go down this tunnel and you kind of go, well, you know, the whole A Wonderful Life story. If I died tomorrow, who'd miss me? Have I made any difference? And I went to the point where, you know what, actually, no one would miss me. You know, my mom might miss me, but she's my mom. You kind of expect that from your mom. And that's the other thing. Sometimes the people closest to you are not the ones to help you because, you know, like my mom, it's kind of expected. You're my mother. You know, it's not like, you killed yourself, but I'm not going to miss you. You're my mom. That's not a humanly, you know, that's not a consistent reaction. And you kind of go, well, have I done anything? Have I got anywhere? And I was just like, I asked myself a question at the time. I was like, you know, if I kept doing what I'm doing, because I was so far down the journey of, I know I can't, if I stopped doing what I did, and even if I came out and said, you know what, America is the most racist nation, I was wrong about everything, I'm not going to have a career in Ireland. I'm not going to have a life here. I'm not going to be able to build it. And even if I could, it wouldn't be a good life. I wouldn't be happy. I'd always want to be over here. And I kind of went, if I do this for another 10 years, will anything change? And I was just like, no. And I was just in such a dark place. And then I was like, well, then if nothing's going to change and you have no hope for yourself, you've hope for other people, but your own self you need to be happy with, why bother continuing? And then that leads to a lot of other thoughts. And like, yeah. And like, because we are a society as well, not passing the buck on other people, but we're a very disposable society, right, where we just throw things away. You know, and like I remember, you know, the great, and he's not great, he's one of the most despicable people, but the Irish people would say the great playwright George Bernard Shaw, where he said, sir or madam, would you care to justify your existence? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I can't justify my existence. I'm a burden to society. I don't earn money. I don't do anything. I don't really create anything. And it just went down a rabbit hole. And I came close. Like, I can tell you exactly how I was going to do it. I had a stash of pills. And I had a large bottle of whiskey, and I was going to mix the two. And if I had mixed the two, I would have went into a massive coma and then eventually died. And I even had it down to a point where I knew my mother wouldn't be around and I wouldn't be found for a long time.
What stopped you?
Fear, which is not the right answer, but it is the answer for me. I got to a point where, honestly, as a Christian, I wasn't ready to meet God.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready for that conversation because in my eyes, while I hadn't achieved anything, quote unquote, I wasn't ready to have the conversation of, hey, so you got these gifts. There's no reason why. And I'm not saying, because I'm very careful of what Christians say, well, God speaks to me and, I know and stuff. I'm not that type of person because I feel very uncomfortable. I've never actually had a conversation with God. Other people probably have, and maybe that's just not, maybe he has conversations with other people. But for me, there is no other way you can say what I am without him, because there's no way you could take an Irish person who doesn't have a college degree, who wasn't a great student in school, because I hated school, I hated with a passion, I nearly dropped out, that then all of a sudden becomes somewhat smart on the American founding principles and the American Constitution and the idea of God's law and the idea of freedom. There's no other earthly way to explain that. It doesn't make sense in earthly terms. There's only way you can say that is it's a blessing or a gift from him. And then I just thought about the scriptures of, the guy who got 10 talents, the guy who got 5 talents, the guy who got 1 talent. I always make very clear I'm the person in that story with 1 talent.
Yeah,
and I
too.
Wasn't ready to meet God and then say, well, what did you do with the talent? Well, I didn't think I did anything with it. I couldn't do anything with it, so I killed myself, and here I am. The story in the Bible doesn't end well for the guy with 1 talent who buried it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm not ready to have this conversation. So I was just looking for it. So I was like, I can't do this. And then I was like, what am I going to do? And I still have demons. I'm going through a little bit of drama in my life right now for the last 4 days, and a lot of demons are starting to come back. But I've got Tanya, and we're talking about them. We're going through them. But there's a lot of anxiety in my life the last 4 days. I'm not going to lie, and very unsure. But I'm dealing with the demons better. But literally, you have to get to a point. What saved me was I started to look for joy and stuff. So that's why comedy is a big part of me. Literally I was watching a load of Abbott and Costello at the time, watching a bit of Dave Chappelle, like Ricky Gervais. I was just wanting to laugh because it's also a chemical reaction. How we're not just fluke beings. We're here because, there's endorphins in our brain. And if you laugh, you smile. And if you smile, you feel better about yourself. No matter how bad you are, like even imagine if you're at a funeral and someone says to you, you tell your story about, one time you had a conversation with your mother and then you laugh and you smile. You automatically feel better. It might only happen for a second, but it is that chemical rush that makes you just get over that little bit of doubt. And it was just a lot watching a bit of comedy, trying to get better. And then I just went, right, we've been down this rabbit hole. We're clearly in our eyes, killing ourselves is not an option. What is the alternative? Going all in. And that's where this tour started to happen. Then I had to cancel it 4 or 5 times with different people. Why? Because I couldn't get here with coronavirus restrictions. I just kept saving the money, building it up, getting here. But my life now is I'm going all in. I don't know how long I'll live, but you need to be reminded of why you're the best story, because your story is a biblical story and it needs to be remembered. And for those who are feeling hopeless right now, and if you're listening and you have depression issues, reach out to someone. Reach out to me, but reach out to someone who's been through this experience. Because one thing I've learned, because I'm actually helping a few people, or I'm friends with a few people who are going through dark times as well, is suicidal people will only talk to suicidal people. Why? Because with the best intents in the world, people who've never been through it don't get it. Like, it does take a bit of a, and I'm not saying you're crazy, but it is a crazy thought to have where you're like, I'm just going to end my life. That there is no hope. There is no better tomorrow or better next week. No matter what magic wand you have, nothing will ever get better. Let's end it. That is a crazy thought. You're not a crazy person. It's a crazy thought. And we need to reach out to these people. And why I'm so passionate about this issue, especially now, is what are we doing in coronavirus world? We're telling people to isolate.
Right.
We're telling people that, hey, you know what? You need to be in a room 24 hours a day by yourself and have all these thoughts. And then the thoughts get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when the numbers start coming out, you're going to see a lot of people killing themselves.
Oh, I know. We're already starting to see some of that. But if people do want to reach out to you, if they do need hope, right? Or they need somebody who understands, who's been there. They can find you on social media. You're
Twitter or Facebook, Freedom's Disciple.
Freedom Disciple. Freedom Disciple, Facebook or Twitter. If they want to help out with getting your message out and help with the tour, where you go and express to America, you should still have hope. Here's why. Donorbox.org/freedomsdisciple. Donorbox.org/freedomsdisciple. So, being that you're about to officially become an American and you want to accomplish, I love that you want to get to all 50 states. It's also a goal of mine. Considering you have lived overseas your entire life, Where's your count right now? How many states you been to?
Oh, I'd say I'm in the 20s.
All right. Look at that. That's awesome, man.
Well, I did 15 states this tour alone.
That's what I wondered, how many you knocked out on this tour.
15 on this tour.
That's cool. That's cool.
But I want to speak in, obviously some states will be hard. One of my goals is to speak in every state. Obviously it's going to be hard. Like who's going to have me in Massachusetts? Who's going to have me in New York?
Hey, you never know.
Oh, absolutely. But, even if I can get like 2 people on a lawn, that counts, right?
That does, yes. So if you want Jonathan to speak, reach out at Freedom Disciple. Send him a message and say, hey, I got a lawn and I live in Massachusetts.
Yeah. And I don't have a shotgun and I'm not an old guy saying, get off my lawn.
That's right. Right. So that's great, man. And I wish you so much success with your message. I mean, you are literally a disciple for freedom. And in that, I hope that you will be a disciple for your own mental health. And I hope that you don't end up in those dark places again, because you do matter, okay? Let's make that very clear. You are doing, quite frankly, the Lord's work in spreading this message, and I hope that you will continue to not only do that, but to see the worth and the value in that, because everybody needs to hear that message, man.
Amen.
And I don't know how many people are communicating it as passionately and as clearly as you are. So stick around, would you?
Yeah, no, I will. But that's the one thing Americans need to start doing better, because I've been blessed with this tour and all the events. But the comment I get most frequently, and this is a sad state of America, and it needs to be addressed, because you can solve these problems if you just start acting the right way. Mm-hmm. I've had people come up to me. Some people have cried, some people have been really emotional, some people have been really positive about the message. Like, I really like what you said. It's been a long time since I've heard that. I'm like, why is that? Why does it take an Irish guy to come over and tell you how great you are? You need to start telling it, but also telling it in the sense of not that, because I see some people starting to say like, yeah, we're America, we're great, we're all powerful, we're just awesome. No, it's not telling the world you're exceptional or great. It's telling the story why. Mm-hmm. It's not bragging when you say, here's why we're different. And if you start sharing the stories, but also understanding that we need to encourage people to change the world. Can I share one other last story with you? So I'm always asked, John, I'm only one person, what can I do? And this is one of my favorite stories from the Revolutionary War. Do you know how women doing laundry helped win the Revolutionary War? And it's not because of what you think. They had to get fresh uniforms. It has nothing to do with uniforms.
Has something to do with a cannon.
Nope.
Dang it.
So, if you read anything, there's many books about this, George Washington inspiring and different things.
Yeah.
But it's in Massachusetts, and if you know the geography of Massachusetts, there's loads of different alcoves and caves, and they would have secret meetings down there in the Revolutionary War, but no one knew all the details. All they would knew was part of the story, and then they'd pass it on. I'd meet you, and I'd say, this is the message, and then you take the message and then go tell other people, and we'd go. But how did they decide where to meet safely? Because they're the founders and the generals and stuff, and all these people who are, trying to get all this spying. If they're caught, you literally have a whole spy infrastructure gone. How did they tell the message? By laundry. What would happen? One of the ladies who would live near the bays in Massachusetts would be told a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and that's all she was told, and that would represent the number of white bed sheets she would wash and hang out on the line the next day. And what British general is looking, going, oh, Mrs. Maguire over there, she had 3 bed sheets yesterday and she's got 5 today. I think there's something suspicious going on there. No, there's nothing. It's just white bed sheets. What did they represent? What? If there was 3 bed sheets or 5 bed sheets or 1 bed sheet, that is where the meeting in the Bay 1 or Bay 3 or Bay 5 or Bay 2 was happening that night. Amazing. If that woman or those women were not doing laundry, you might get caught, and then all of a sudden your revolution might not happen. You might not have the same information, and then it happens. That's how I'm not saying go do laundry, but it's just simple things like this.
I love those stories too. There's so many stories like that throughout history, which they're fascinating. And that one I had not heard at all. My gosh, I love it.
Yeah, but just something simple. Like you tend to, especially right now when you look at all the problems, and I hear all these discussions, and some people ask me, you always look for these big grandiose plans. Mm-hmm. Look for laundry. Or if I may give you a quote, Martin Luther King, anyone can be great because anyone can serve. It's simple. Help your neighbor. Mm-hmm. Be financially independent. Go volunteer at a political meeting. Go volunteer for charity. You can do anything. You can change the world. It's so simple to change the world. I used to be part of a big charity, and I used to go recruit for them. And I used to say, you might think you need a lot of skills for what you're about to do. You don't. You need to know the following. You need to be able to smile and mean it, but then fundamentally you need to ask one question and listen for the answer. Hi, how are you? That changes the world. How many times do we have a conversation? Hey, buddy, good to see you. How you doing? Good. And you, are you doing good? Yeah, I'm good. And then we just walk off. Many times you actually say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And actually wait. You're not ready to say, I'm great too, and keep walking. You have that conversation, because that's what we need, and that's what COVID has proved to you. If you take nothing out, there's many lessons from COVID. We are creatures of habit, but also creatures where we need human interaction. Proved that. In 2021, we have more material stuff than ever before. If material stuff was enough to get by, you would not have a suicide problem now. Why? Because people would be in their homes, they'd be safe, they have watched Netflix all day, they can play all their Xboxes, they can order everything they want off Amazon, they can have all the stuff they want. Every material object you want, you get. And by the way, some people were earning more money in the pandemic than they ever were in their lifetime before, so they could buy more stuff and they didn't have the same bills. What happens? You would expect suicides to go down. They didn't. They went up. Why? Because we lost that human interaction, that one-to-one. And we need to start getting back to that and making that political. We need to stop thinking of people as, hey, I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, you're Trump, I'm anti-Trump. No, you're Keith, I'm Jonathan. You're not white and I'm not black. You're not gay, I'm not straight. None of those. It's you're Keith, I'm Jonathan. How you doing, buddy? You okay? And start having those conversations. Because as amazing as you might think I am, if you think I'm amazing doing 65 events in 85 days, I can only talk to people who will turn up and listen to me. You can talk to people in your neighborhood who may never go to any Democratic meeting, no church, or no Republican meeting, or no Tea Party meeting, or no 9/12 meeting. They may never leave their house bar to do their job. I can't reach them. No matter how much advertising we do, I'll never reach them. You can. Why? Because you're a neighbor. So it's understand your power and your role, and never, ever, ever think you're worthless. That is the big message. You have the power. You just need to start being encouraged to use it.
I love it. I love it. Jonathon Dunne, it is a pleasure to know you and call you friend. Freedom Disciple, Facebook and Twitter. Man, it's so great having you here. I can't wait till you're here permanently, and you are an American, because you, sir, are, I hate to use the word, but boy, it's the truth. You are very deserving of the title. God bless you, man.
Thank you, brother, for having me.
Absolutely.
Keep up your great work.
Thanks. It is so easy to root for Jonathon Dunne, and it's my hope that his future in his new country is everything he's hoped for. I am so thrilled to call him friend, and so happy that I can call him an American very soon. Hey, would you mind doing this podcast a huge favor? Could you take a moment over the next week to tell a friend about At The Mic? Maybe text them the link to atthemicshow.com and tell them that, hey, look, if you want some easy to listen to conversations, they're all right there waiting for you. 80 episodes to listen to now. atthemicshow.com. As always, I'm so grateful that you listen to this podcast. And if you're interested, there's show merchandise available when you head to atthemicshop.com. Maybe check that out as well. I appreciate you stopping by over there whenever you can. I hope you'll join us here next week when my friend Ellen Wheeler stops by. She has a story to tell us. She took a life-changing journey from Utah to Hollywood, ended up in the world of politics. Oh yeah, and she also had to deal with a volcano in between. That's next week on At The Mic. Until then, please go be free. And thank you for listening.
This has been At The Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production. Head to atthemicshow.com for archived episodes, sponsor information, and ways to connect.
Hey, I have a great update about Jonathon and his new bride, Tanya. Yep, it's official, and I wanted to tack this on to the end of this episode to make sure you knew about the great news. The two are already married, and he should officially be an American and living in Oklahoma within the next couple of months. I am so happy for both of them. They're great people. So glad that he can call himself an American at last. How awesome is that? Well, wanted to make sure you knew, and we'll see you next week right here for another episode of At The Mic.